Silent Hill F is now out, and I wanted to make a short video for my series, Is It Worth Buying? Now, this is sort of like a mini review, where I take a look at what a game is, what it offers, the value, if I think the game is good, and really at the end of the day, if I think it's worth spending your money on, especially in today's world where a lot of us don't have a lot of money. Now, I always put this little clarification. Your money is your money. At the end of the day, you're going to find things worth money that may not be worth money to me at all, and there may be things that I spend my money on that you look at me like, what the hell are you doing? Why would you spend your money that way? That's how it is. But I'm going to do this to the best of my ability, taking a look at this game, because I've been actually having a lot of fun so far, and this is a game that, on its way to come out, I've defended several times in concept, and got shit for. And the few times I critiqued things about it, I also got shit for. So I already can tell a divisive game. There are people saying that they feel like it's not Silent Hill because it takes place in a new area, you're just slapping the IP on it. And there are other people saying, well, Silent Hill wasn't always just about the town, it was about the town's god, these entities, the other world, the supernatural, all of these things manifesting in the real world, etc. So, we're taking a look at that today. If you do enjoy this video, I'd love if you leave a like, subscribe, hype the video. Those things help me out a lot. But I do have a question of the day for you, which is, in general, if you've been playing this game, what do you think about it so far? And if you haven't been playing this game, you know, or even if you have, what is a Silent Hill game to you? You know, what does Silent Hill actually mean? For me, Silent Hill has always been less about just the town, although that does play a huge part of it. But it's also been about world building, storytelling, a personal, character-driven story where the character you're playing as matters narratively. It's not just a self-insert, and it's not just a avatar that you create. Those can be really fun too, but Silent Hill has always been about the more narrative-focused, personal story of characters involved to me, and how that intersects with horror. Silent Hill F, I think, fulfills that vision of the heart of the series very well. Now, you play as Hinako, a young girl who is, I believe, like 14 or 15 years old, essentially, basically in high school, and you are still kind of discovering who you are, but you're also dealing with things around you, like bullying, expectations, especially expectations of 1960s Japanese society. And you might think, oh, is this just some, like, hardcore political feminist game, blah, 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 because whenever these things come up, people get really triggered about them. No, this is just a game about someone existing in the world. The same way that Silent Hill 3 has a lot of themes regarding things like childbearing and violation of women and religious trauma, or the same way that Silent Hill 2 has a lot of themes of personal guilt, tragedy, existing in the world as just an average person, dealing with terminal illness. You know, these games have never shied away from talking about serious things and putting those in a new narrative lens that I would say combines psychological horror and manifestations of those themes with the game and the world and the narrative you are playing through. Silent Hill F does that extremely well in terms of its story. And I'm going to avoid heavy story spoilers or anything like that. Really, most of the footage I'm showing is from the first 5 hours of the game, and I'm going to avoid, like, really big things that happen. But in general, this does feel like a tragedy, but also a mystery. You're trying to figure out what the hell is going on. You're trying to figure out why are characters saying the things they are. What is actually real? Those are very much in line to me with what Silent Hill has really always been. The world itself is beautiful. I love this era of Japan, and it really does kind of cross together the country and the urban. You know, it's almost this smaller town that does have elements of larger Japan in it, but it is also isolated. It is also a town that still is dealing with a lot of different things like modern medicine versus religious medicine or folk medicine. That's a big part of the game too. Things like tragedies happening in the town that have been covered up. Again, it's very much in line with Silent Hill. You have this smaller town, and I know by the time of Silent Hill 4, it's a lot bigger, but you have this, I would say, more isolated town area where there are secrets to be found. And I think that the world building does such a beautiful job with that. And it is also very unique with how they incorporate things like what you would maybe call the other world or the fog world or whatever you want to call it in this game into the world, with flowers and growths and things like that appearing. It's not just a repeat of Silent Hill 2 where just fog falls and everything gets creepy. There is fog obviously too, but it's more of a, I can see how it is Silent Hill, but it's trying to go a different direction with those manifestations, you know, with more of the imagery being flower based, almost organic plant growth based, and how that combines with the natural environments into this horror that almost looks like blood vessels and guts and gore. And it's very interesting. I remember one of the taglines for this game was essentially finding the beauty in horror, and it is definitely that. Like, there are areas you go to that are sickeningly terrifying, but also beautiful at the same time. They did a very good job of incorporating those elements into the world and even into monster design. Monsters in this game, they are probably the best monster designs I've seen in Silent Hill since the original 4 games. And that's a huge praise. Now, obviously, you did have something like Sakura Head, which I believe was created by Masahiro Ito for the short message. There's things like that that have popped up here and there that are really cool. But I think in terms of just a full-on Silent Hill game with unique monster designs that actually matter and are interesting, Silent Hill F is the first time I've seen that in many, many years. I am someone who can still enjoy parts of the weird era of Silent Hill after 4. I had fun with a game like Downpour, as troubled as it was. But one of the big things that frustrated me about those games was that the monster designs were almost always lacking. They didn't really have a lot of personality usually, and they didn't have a lot of meaning. And Silent Hill F is actually a return to form when it comes to those issues that the series had had for a long time. Now, that said, there are things that are going to frustrate people, and possibly rightfully so, depending on who you are. Now, I'm not Digital Foundry, I always say that, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this, but I will say that the performance mode of this game, while it is smoother, I believe it drops down below 720p a bunch of the time, like to 360p. Some of that stuff is technically, like on the technical level, should really be seen as unacceptable. And I actually wonder if this game would have been even better optimized if it was created in something like Unreal Engine 4, where I believe Stellar Blade was, because a game like that looks basically just as good as this game, but runs way better. And that's a big problem, I think, with Konami. They're really pushing Unreal Engine 5 with all of their games that they're publishing right now. And I just personally wonder if Unreal Engine 5 is worth pushing on this hardware. I mean, at some point, we're going to be able to brute force past all of the problems with technical limitations as technology gets better. But right now, it seems like Unreal Engine 5 is very hard to optimize and hard to use. And that does kind of pop up here. That's why I've kept this game on quality mode, which I almost never do with games. I always do performance or balanced. Silent Hill F I've just kept on quality because I'd rather lock it at around 30 FPS and not have the image end up looking like Swiss cheese. That's just my opinion though on the base PS5. Now, with all of that said, there were questions going into it with the gameplay, calling it, well, many people calling it a Souls-like, and the developers saying, yeah, there are similarities, but it's not a Souls-like. I can see why those comparisons were made by reviewers after playing the game myself, especially because a lot of the gameplay revolves around melee combat where you're trying to either parry or dodge or find an in to attack someone. Now, there are a lot of ways to avoid enemies. Classic Silent Hill, you know, that's very much something that they push. Avoid enemies if you don't have to fight them. But I found in Silent Hill F, there are a lot of times where you end up stuck in corridors, and if you've tried to avoid enemies, you have like 5 of them following you. And so in that way, there are times where you just have to pick enemies off like a Dark Souls game, and I can see why that comparison is made, but I'm really torn on the combat. I like the combat in this game, but I do not love it. And there is a focus system that ties into the sanity system, which I thought the sanity system was going to be a lot more in depth. Really, the main point of the sanity system is it acts like a shield for these things called psychological attacks that once sanity drains can hurt your health. But also, it acts as a bar that you can use to charge focus attacks. Now, there are 3 difficulty settings, unless there's a secret 4th one I haven't gotten to, but there are 3 difficulty settings that I've seen that have trophies, tied to them, whatever. There's story mode, there's hard mode, and then there's Lost in the Fog. Now, Lost in the Fog is obviously the hardest of these, but for me personally, I have been playing on hard mode because story mode actually eliminates a bunch of the mechanics tied to focus and makes the game, I would argue, too easy when it comes to the sanity side of the game. But then hard mode, I felt the opposite. I felt personally like the way that the combat is balanced, the way that the health items are dispersed throughout the game, and the way that enemies will track you quite a distance, especially in certain areas, which I don't want to spoil, that has made it very frustrating of a combat experience where I'm someone who has platinumed like all the From Software games, I think with the exception of Sekiro. Now, that's not a qualifier. I'm not saying I'm better than you or whatever. I'm just saying I have no problem with hard games. I have no problem with difficulty. I have no problem with dying and repeating content. That's fine. But I think my issue with Silent Hill F comes in where some of the combat balancing just doesn't feel balanced at all. And there's supposed to be a mechanic where you can lose enemies, like go around corners, they lose sight of you. That works sometimes. Other times, they just keep tracking you. Like a mile. It's like they'll follow you forever. And I don't really understand why that is. At the point of the game, I've gotten to, I just don't really get why that's the case. When I'm looking at this, I don't have a problem with even the Lost in the Fog mode for puzzles. Some of them are a little obscure, and I've found Silent Hill 2's puzzles to be better personally. But I was someone who found Silent Hill 2 Remake to be a little too easy. Now, that's not to say it wasn't fun. It was one of my games of the year when it came out, and I adore the game. And I adore the original. But looking at this game, it almost feels like the developers saw what Bloober did with Silent Hill 2, and they did see that complaint online that it was too easy, because that was a common complaint. And then they decided to try to go the other direction. That's what it feels like to me. And there's times where it works really well and it's very satisfying, and there are also times where it's extremely frustrating to me and not fun. Like the other night, I just shut the game off out of frustration, where it was not scary anymore at that point, it was just annoying, because I had died like 10 times to something. Now, I know people can say, oh, you're just bad, but at the end of the day, like, this is my honest opinion. I'm not gonna act like I'm Michael Jordan out here with this game, just pulling off magic. There are a lot of points where I've gotten stuck and I've needed to progress, and I'm fine with that. But there are other points where I've gotten stuck and it actually just fundamentally feels unfair. And that's where I get irritated with a game, especially with a horror game where it's not that things shouldn't be a threat, but if you've died 10 times to a monster, I would argue it no longer just feels like a threat, it just feels like it's trying your patience. So I would have really liked some kind of mode between these two. Story mode, I think, is too easy in terms of toning down the sanity mechanics and cutting out a bunch of mechanics to the point where when you get tutorials in the game, they even tell you, oh, if you're on story mode, this doesn't even matter. Just don't even worry about it. That really shouldn't be the case. There should have been an easy mode if you wanted there to be, some kind of normal mode, and then a hard mode, and then a very hard mode. It feels to me like it was an easy mode, then a really hard mode, then a really, really hard mode. I just don't understand why there was no middle ground there. But with that said, I do appreciate the, I would say, courage to leave guns behind in this game, to go with a different style of combat, to try to focus on something new. That is something that I appreciate. I always appreciate when games do that. I just wonder if maybe patches or something will fix this combat system a little more, because there are points where you really do have to engage in combat with enemies, and sometimes it's totally fine, other times it's very frustrating. I will admit that for me, I need to make better use of the focus, where you actually use focus in order to get off a devastating blow. But I also find myself on this harder mode not wanting to sacrifice my sanity to do that, because then I will take more damage and then combat will feel more annoying. So instead I end up playing it like a Dark Souls game where I am trying to go in, get a couple light attacks off, back off, go in, get a couple, you know what I mean? So I'm really torn on that combat system. I like it, but at the point I'm at, I don't love it. I do want to wrap this up because I don't want to waste your time here or anything like that. Overall, I do think the game is worth buying. I think the story has been very, very interesting. I think that the worlds are not just a repeat of previous Silent Hill games. You know, even something like what you'd call the Otherworld, where you leave normal reality. It's not just a repeat of Silent Hill 2 or 3 or anything like that. I felt like this is unique, but also very much Silent Hill at the same time. That's what I wanted out of this game. That's what I've been getting out of this game. And I like that it is a focused story that is very tailored to the character you're playing, does have a lot of those narrative elements in it where you actually are analyzing what's happening and learning about the character and learning about the world, solving mysteries almost of what's going on in the background, even with other families in this Japanese village around you, and learning about that world. That's so much Silent Hill for me. That is so much like Heather going around in Silent Hill 3 and finding a note about the Order. That's very much to me like James going around and finding a storekeeper's note about something that happened and then going and solving it. This is very much the Silent Hill world. And to be able to mix that with Japan, have such interesting characters, have a unique and new combat system that frustrates me at times, but is unique and new and deserves its flowers for that, literally, and the flower symbolism and all this stuff. I've really enjoyed it. I do recommend the game to people. I don't think it's just a game with Silent Hill slapped on it. I think the people saying that have not played it personally, or maybe haven't played any of the Silent Hill games except 2 Remake, because that standpoint just makes no sense to me. I think it's worth your time, worth your money, worth checking out, and I've really enjoyed it so far. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed this video, you want to leave, like, subscribe, let me know what you think in the comments down below. It always does help me out a lot, hyping the video, things like that. We have other ways to support our channel. I always throw it out there. Our Fortnite code helps us out a lot. And of course, as well, we do have our own store, cosmobunny.shop. New products are up over there. One-of-a-kind things for one-of-a-kind people, which I know you are. Coasters, keychains, trays, and more made from recycled paper, from damaged comics, manga, magazines, and more. These are resin pieces where we take something like that, use it transformatively as a part of a piece in a new medium, then we recycle the rest. So discount code DJAY123 gets you 10% off over there on your first purchase. Have a fantastic day. As always, everyone, stay shui.